We all need to be free to be who God created us to be. And we need to walk that road of freedom. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. First of all, we need to know the truth. And when we know the truth will make us free, set us free. We will be free indeed. Truth and freedom go hand in hand, but truth will produce freedom only if it is used. If we don't use the word of God, which is true, what good is it? Truth is real events or facts. So once we know the truth, then there's no reason for us to not to be free. So we're going to start from the beginning. Start from the beginning. First of all, to be free, you have to come out of bondage. So if we reflect back to the past weeks, we have been talking about deliverance. And we have been in the midst of it, going to the root of it, discovering what deliverance is and how to be delivered. And we started this, believe it or not, during Passover. And we're moving to Pentecost. So from Passover to Pentecost, God is doing a cleansing, a washing away of all the stuff that has and that still has some of us bound, tied up, wrapped up, tangled up in bondage. And a lot of us don't even realize that we don't know it until it is brought forth and revealed. So he has to walk us from Passover to Pentecost. He has to walk us from the old thinking, the old desires, from our shame, our unworthiness, from all of our faults, and walk us into that newness of the Spirit which came at Pentecost. But we can't get there if we're still bogged down. Because if you remember in Exodus, now God, we were given the word one morning in prayer that God is going to be moving suddenly. Things are going to happen quickly, and it has started for some people. But if we really want to be walking in it, then we're going to have to be free. Now, if you remember when in Exodus, that is when the Passover, and God told Moses to tell people, now you got to be ready. You got to have your shoes on. You got to have your staff in your hand, and you got to have your cloak tied up so you're going to be able to move quickly. Now, they didn't, when it was time to go, and he told them, he said, now y'all get what you need from the Egyptians. So when they left, they had plenty. Because the Egyptians said, y'all got to go. Y'all have got to get out of here before we all die. Because he had brought plague upon plague upon plague until that last one when he killed all the firstborn of everyone that wasn't an Israelite. And so God came suddenly because the Egyptians said, get out, and they had to go. And then you remember at Passover, when Passover came, suddenly that sound of a mighty rushing wind, so it came upon them, but they were ready for it because they were all on one accord. But now when the Egyptians kicked the Israelites out and they were on that trek, they still kept the thinking of being in bondage. They didn't leave it. Because once they got out there, it was still in their minds and their hearts. They left afraid, and then they were afraid of what was ahead of them. So we don't want to be that way. We want to leave what we're going to leave, and we don't want to go back and pick it up and bring it forth, bring it to the place where he's taken us to. Bondage, the definition that I got was being bound or controlled by a force, an influence, a law, or external powers. So in bondage, we know a lot of times we're not moving of our own accord. A lot of things we know not to do, not to go, not to do. But then again, we still do it. As Paul has said, the things that I don't want to do, I do those, and the things that I need to do, I don't do. And so a lot of us, we put ourselves in that same position. But we have to realize at that time that no, that's not God working in this. Because I know better. And that's different when you don't know the Lord. But when you know the Lord, then you should do better. Because the word says, not this word, but you've heard, when you know better, you do better. But a lot of times we don't. But we should. So, when we have to get out of the chains and whatever else, the chains that have our minds locked down, the chains that just don't let us realize that we can do what we need to do. We become conditioned and we don't realize it. You take the example, I had used this one day, you have the invisible fence that people use to keep their animals in when they don't want the actual fence. So that animal over time knows how far he can go. And then I had read one time over in India, they train the elephants because they put a shackle on their ankle and they can only go so far. Because somebody asked, why come the elephant just doesn't go? Well, he knows he can't go any further because he's trained. And then once they do take it off, he's not going to go any further than he was allowed to go with that on. And some of us put ourselves in the same position. Because we have been told over and over, you can hear something over and over, be told something over and over until you believe that thing, even though it's not true. Even though it's not true. You could be told, you're just going to be like this one. You're just going to be like that one. You know where you come from. How are you going to do that? Nobody from over there ever did anything like that. And it just goes over and over and over and over. And you say, then somebody said, well, why didn't you ever do it? Well, I didn't think I could. I didn't realize I could. Because you have been conditioned to believe that you couldn't, that you can't, that you're not supposed to. And that's what is holding us back. Do y'all remember the movie The Help? And when they were firing the housekeeper, well, the whole time she was in the house, she was telling that little girl something over and over and over. And on the day they told her she had to leave, she went right back to that little girl. And she said, you is smart. You is kind. And I forgot the other thing she said. And you is important. So I know a lot of times, myself and a lot of us mothers, we've missed the mark. We haven't been the perfect parent. We've missed the mark. I've missed the mark. We've given wrong advice because we were given wrong advice, which we thought was right at the time. But then you go on and you keep giving that, then you realize, no, that was not right. So as Tia said this morning, it's not too late to go back and correct that. I told you that, and that just, it really didn't make sense then, and I know why, because it was wrong. So we need to change this. It's not too late. And for you that have the little ones, you got a good start. You have a good start of doing it the correct way. And then for those of us that are older, it's not too late to turn things around. And so we have to put the effort in. And that's going to break a lot of the bondages that we have grown up in. Because I still hear people say some of the things that we were told, the old wives' tales. And I remember they took this stuff seriously. We'd be sweeping the floor and they'd draw their feet up. Don't sweep my feet. As a kid, you're saying, don't sweep your feet. Don't sweep their feet. They won't get married. Don't do this. And it was some crazy ones out there. But and you're thinking as a kid, that really doesn't make sense. But as you hear it, you just say the same thing. And you do, don't split that pole, bad luck. And I still see people do that today. You split that pole. I said, yeah, what? Don't step on the crack of the sidewalk. I mean, it's just you think about it. It just doesn't make sense. Don't break the mirror. 7 years bad luck. Oh, my God, I broke the mirror. We broke the mirror. You just can't see clearly out of it anymore. I carry around a broke one now. I'm not looking forward to 7 years or no 1 day of bad luck, okay? But we have to be careful and remove ourselves from what's holding us back. We also have to be careful when something, now as we've been going, through our deliverance series, we have to be careful when someone may say something or refer to us as someone or something we don't like. You're mean. You're selfish. You're harsh. Oh, here comes Miss Goody Two-Shoes. Oh, here comes the joy of happiness, which she's got to be so happy about. Take the time and write them down. Whatever is said, take the time to write it down. Go back and look at it and say, am I critical? Am I too blunt? Am I too happy? Is there such a thing as being too happy? The thing about that is you're not a complainer. Because some people, as soon as something happens, they just get to complaining about it. You find that person that's happy or joyful all the time, they've found the good thing. They've been optimistic with it. They found the good that came out of it. Oh, the house burned down. Oh, Lord, what we going to do? Oh, everything we had was in the house. Your house burned down? I'm sorry about that. But you all are still here. That's the optimistic person. So when we hear certain things or we think back about how we may have been, or they say you're just going to be like your mama, you're going to be like your sisters, going to be like your daddy. Well, ask them, well, how are they? How were they? And then when they tell you how they were, write it down so that you can see if you're like that, if you were like that. Because you don't want to be that if it's bad. And a lot of times you have people that overcompensate for something because they're trying not to be something. So don't overdo it. Discover why you're that way and begin to change if it's not good. Because the Lord is revealing you to be who He created you to be. Put up for me John 10:10. He comes not, which means only. He only comes to steal, kill, and destroy. So He's coming to take everything because He's going to kill, steal, and destroy. That means He doesn't want to leave you with anything. And if you let Him have His way, He will not leave you with anything. He will make sure to take everything. He will take your dignity. He will take your value. He will take your strength. He will kill you by taking your joy, taking your peace, taking your hope, and then your life. He will try to destroy your relationship, your family, your livelihood. So we have to guard our heart to make sure that we do not allow him to steal from us, to kill us, or destroy us. But Jesus says, I am come that they may have life and that they may have it more abundantly. So when you're walking around in bondage, you're not going to have that life more abundantly, and that's what the thief is counting on. He's going to accomplish every one of those acts if we allow him to. That's why we have to guard our hearts. Proverbs 4:23 says, watch over your heart with all diligence, for from it flows the springs of life. So God has placed something in us that's valuable. A spring of life. And a spring, you can't stop a spring because it's bubbling from down beneath. So it just continues to flow and flow and flow. And that's what we ought to do. We ought to continue to flow, to flow, to flow to everyone that we cross paths with. Now, for us to come out of the bondage and be free, we need to know how we were created. So could you put up Genesis 1:27? Genesis 1:27. This is the first thing that we need to know, and the world is confused about this right now. So God created man in his own image. In the image of God created he him, male and female created he them. And then 28, and God blessed them, and God said unto them, be fruitful and multiply and replenish the earth and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the fowl of the air, and over every living thing that moves upon the earth. We cannot have dominion and subdue anything if we don't know who we are. If we're bogged down with the cares of the world and with everything that the devil is throwing at us. Ephesians 2:10, for we are his workmanship. We are his own handiwork, his workmanship, created in Christ Jesus, born anew, that we may do those good works which God predestined, planned beforehand for us. Hold on. We are his workmanship. And the definition for created is to cause to come into existence as something unique, new, original, a work of art, one of a kind. Now, you can have twins, but they are still one of a kind. So there used to be a saying that we all look alike. No, we do not all look alike. There is only one of each of us. He created each one of us unique, after himself. So when we allow these different aspects, when we take on these different aspects that are not of God, then we can look back at this and say, now I am a work of art. There's not another me. Now I've run into some people that really resemble some people, but it wasn't that person. Now you can have some lookalikes, but it's not going to be that person. So we have to know who we are in Christ, that we are unique. We are one of a kind. We are original. We are not cast-offs. We are not rejects. We are not confused about, God, you made me a woman. Thank you. God, you made me a man. Thank you. I know who I am. I am not a he, she, item. I am not a they, she, they, them, whoever else. No, he only created two, male and female. And that's who we are. We are fearfully and wonderfully made. Marvelous are his works. Do you see how that love he has for us? He loves us greatly. And he knows all about us. And that's why we have to make sure to come out of bondage that we have his word to go back on. So when they say you're going to be just like so-and-so, well, if so-and-so wasn't a good thing, Lord, no, you didn't make me like that. That's not who I am. That's not who you created me to be. You created me as a work of art. You created me something special. And you created me to do great things. You created me to have answers. You created me to have direction. And you created me to have solutions. And that's why we have so many testimonies of people offering advice, but godly advice to help deliver people, to help bring people through. And that's what we're supposed to do. So if we're walking around with a cloud over our head, we're not helping anyone nor ourselves. Because we have the sun that outshines the physical sun. We have the glory of the Lord in us and with us. If we're in bondage, there's no way we can go from glory to glory and faith to faith. There's no way that he can fill us. We're saying, fill us up, Lord. Fill us up, Lord. How can he fill us up when we're full of all the awful stuff? The stuff that's holding us back. If I stay in my past, I cannot go forward. If I try to hold you in your past, neither are going to go forward. So when we know the truth can set us free. When we know the truth about ourselves, we can be free. No thing or no one can hold us back. To be free, we are not under the control or power of another. We're not confined. We're able to move about. But now being free doesn't mean you just out here all willy-nilly doing everything you want to do without restraint. You cannot be doing anything without restraint. You have to have some restraint, but not being bound. You have to be cultivating the right wants and living in obedience to God's will. So walking into freedom, we have to leave, like when they left Egypt during the Passover, we have to leave all of that stuff back there. When we were children, we were in bondage under the elements of the world. So when we were children and in sin, not knowing Christ is what they're meaning by children. When we were children, not knowing Christ, we were under the bondage of the elements of the world. And that's why we did some of the things that we did, the crazy stuff, because we just didn't know better. But what you can still know better, because he still gives you a concept of right and wrong. So we can't walk around with a sippy cup for the rest of our lives. Most of us have full sets of teeth, and we're able to chew some meat. Because if we're still walking around with a sippy cup, we can't help anybody. When you were a child, you acted like a child, you talked like a child, but it's time to come into adulthood. And God is helping us to come into adulthood. He's opening our eyes. He's opening our ears so that we can hear the truth, hear his word. He's opening our hearts to be able to receive. We can receive correction. We can receive direction. We have to have the open heart to receive. Because if we don't want to grow up and receive, then there's no way we're going to walk over into the power of the Passover, of the Pentecost, because the Pentecost brings power. And we want to have the power. We want to walk in the power of the Holy Ghost. And when we are free to walk into that, it can happen suddenly. And it will happen suddenly. Because there can be a sudden thrusting into it. As the Israelites were thrust out. So in being free, you don't want to keep going back, pulling everything forward with you. You don't want to. In the women's fellowship the other weekend, they were talking about triggers. So you don't want to have to drive by your old house and everything comes flowing back. Oh, when we lived there, we had nothing. Oh, when we lived at this neighborhood, oh, it was so bad. I don't ever want to go back there. Oh, man. And then you go home and you're still thinking about that old neighborhood. There had to be something, just a little bit of good, you think? When you talk about it over there, you remember Miss Annie that used to live down the road. Boy, she used to have the best cookies. There's got to be something good from something. You don't want to hear a name called and it just draws you up. You want to be able to talk about that name? Oh, child. And keep on going. You want to be able to talk about a loved one that passed on and not cry every time you talk about her. You want to be able to reflect back on, you know, you have passed it, walked through it, been delivered from it when you can talk about it and it doesn't bring tears or the different emotions. You know deliverance has arrived. But if every time you mention something and talk about something, you get no good feeling, then it's time we got to dig and see what's going on. Because I think everybody likes being free. Even an animal that has been chained up for a while, when you let him loose, he happy. He might not go too far, but he'll get to kicking up his hind legs and he'll get to jumping around. You think about a horse when that rider gets off his back sometime. That horse get to bucking and jumping. He said, "Ooh, I'm so glad that weight off my back." And that's the same way we should feel about the weight we dropping off. Physical weight, but the weight, but the weight of all of our cares and all of our problems and all of the stuff we did that we can't get over. That's one thing we got to be free of ourselves. We have to release ourselves. You can release everybody else and don't release yourself. You're still walking around tight-lipped, arms crossed, eyes crossed sometimes. We have to free ourselves. We have to free ourselves of the stupid stuff we did. I think back, I said, oh my God, why did you do that? Why did you do that? Why did you say that? How could you have done that? But it's not too late. It's not too late. Jesus can turn that tragedy into a blessing. As it was said this morning, he can restore and he is restoring. Bring the good out of the bad. Put hope back in hopelessness. Put joy back where there was sadness. Put peace where there was chaos, if we allow it. If we allow it. There's nothing better than peace, joy, some happiness, and hope. Because if you have no hope, when the thief takes your hope, your joy, then that brings on the suicide. When you think that there's nothing left, when you think you've held on to the last knot in that rope, Jesus says there is an anchor that you need to grip and hold to that's on that solid rock. That's the only chain we need to be connected to, is the anchor that grips and holds that solid rock. There's a couple of examples of women who became free and were able to go and do extraordinary things. Mary Magdalene, she was possessed by 7 demons. Now, I know one can be pretty bad. But when you have 7, possessed by 7 demons, but she was delivered. She was healed and set free, and she devoted herself to spreading the word about Jesus. But most of the time when you hear the story of Mary Magdalene, it's not a good story. They always, it's a bad rep. But we know that she was one of the forerunners after Jesus' resurrection. Rahab the harlot, which was mentioned. She was considered unclean by society, just the baddest of the bad. But God saw that she had potential. And he used that potential. She saved an entire city. And on top of that, she became the mother of Boaz and great-great-grandmother to King David and ended up in the lineage of Jesus. So what the world can cast aside, Jesus can make very good use of it. Put yourself in that position. All of us have come from somewhere. All of us haven't walked the golden road. I haven't walked the golden road. But for the grace of God, the mercy of God, there is some good somewhere. So don't cast yourself down because somebody else cast you down. Remember who you are and whose you are. We have to remember whose we are. Ruth. Now we know the great story of Ruth. But in the beginning, Ruth was from the tribe of the Moabites, or the people of the Moabites. They were condemned because they did pagan worship. They worshiped false gods. The Israelites were told not to marry, not to intermingle, not to marry with the Moabites. But she ended up marrying an Israelite, Naomi's son. And she ended up following her mother-in-law and God. Following her mother-in-law drew her to God. Ruth ended up, she was an outcast. And she ended up marrying Boaz. She became the mother of Obed and became the great-grandmother of King David and fell right into the lineage of Jesus Christ. So they may say you're an outcast. They might not want nothing to do with you, but you got to remember who you are and whose you are. Let's look at Esther. Esther was a Jew, an orphan Jew. Ended up being queen to the Persian king Xerxes. He didn't know she was a Jew, or else he wouldn't have chose her to be one of his queens. Now, Esther was in her own little place, minding her own business, but she had to summon up some courage. She couldn't just go see the king without being invited. Because remember, his first queen, he invited her, and she said, I ain't going over there to be made a spectacle of by you and the fellows over there. So he just did away with her and said, come on, Esther. But when Mordecai said, you have to help your people, she had to summon up the courage. Because and overcome her fear. She said, now, you know, if I go to the king and I'm not invited, I could lose my life. But she said, and you all know there was a song they used to sing years ago, if I perish, I'll perish, because I'm going to see the king. And Esther saved her people. Think about once you know the truth of who you are, think about the woman at the well, the Samaritan woman, Jesus talking to her. There's another scenario. They're not supposed to talk with Samaritans. But he sat and talked with her. He was thirsty, asked her for some water. And he was telling her about that living water. This was in John 4, chapter 4. And when he told her about that water, she said, "Can you give me some so that I won't thirst anymore?" And so he said, "Yes, I can give you that living water, but go get your husband." And she said, "Well, I don't have one." She told the truth first. And then he said, "You are telling the truth. He's not your husband. You've had 5. But this one is not your husband, as you say." And then she was able to go and tell her people all about that man that told her about herself. So we must know the truth about ourselves so that we can walk out of the bondage that we're in or that we have been in, and it keeps rearing its ugly head by Satan or by whatever other reasons. So anytime that you hear, "You're not this, you're not that. Why can't you be this or be that?" Find out. Make sure you write these things down. Because that is the only way, once we find out who we are, why we are the way we are, that we can overcome what's holding us back. But now, after that you have known God, or rather are known of God, how turn ye again to the weak and beggarly elements, whereunto you desire again to be in bondage? Now, once you walk out of that and you're set free, you want to go back to it? I don't think anyone that, was a slave and got away from it wanted to go back to it. I've read a few books on them. They said, it was tough for them to escape slavery, and then you think you've made it to a free place or a safe place, and then they pass a law and saying, send people there because if you see them, you can send them back. So that's a tough spot. So you want to get free from something, but then you're going to let them talk you back into going back. Nope. Don't want to do that. So Galatians 5:1. Stand fast, therefore, in the liberty wherewith Christ has made us free, and be not entangled again with the yoke of bondage. Stand fast in your liberty. Don't let things trigger you. Don't let your thoughts take you back. Don't let people take you back. Once you know the truth, then you know. If you know you're free, then you're free. As Tia had said this morning, it's not too late. It is not too late for us. We may not have given the best advice to our kids at some times. We may not have directed them in the right direction all the time. We may not have said the right things all the time, done the right things all the time, but it's not too late. We, as women, a lot of times, we do have the tough position. We do have the tough position. As I said, your children might be old, and we do on some things. We have to go back, and it might be tough. We have to go back and apologize to our children for not doing things we should have done, not saying things we should have said. And children, the little children are not in here, but the teens, make sure you're listening. Make sure you're getting good advice, good counsel. You only have us for a certain amount of time. We only have you for a certain amount of time. So parents, let us get them on the right track. Let us steer them from the faults that we made. Let us steer them from the craziness and foolishness that we did. Let's help them not make the same mistakes that we made. All of them may not have been crazy mistakes. It could have just been a little something, because everybody's not the same. But from whatever it was, let's keep them from doing the same thing. Don't let what's holding us back hold them back. Let them walk in the freedom that we want. We want them to walk in the freedom that we're walking in. So children, don't be afraid to talk to your parents. Besides food and clothes. Besides food and clothes. And to be free, as Tia was saying this morning, requires getting help from others. If you want to be truly free, you will ask for advice to better yourself without feeling embarrassed. Some of us think we've done something so terrible that we can't get help for it. But there is help, and there is hope. We just have to reach out. Sometimes people are reaching out to us and we're drawing away, but we need to go forward to get that. We do have a wellspring of life on the inside of us. And we do have gifts on the inside of us that we need to stir up. Stir up the gift on the inside. Bring life to yourself and bring life to the others around you. Bring hope to yourself and bring hope to others around you. Bring joy to yourself and bring joy to those around you. We need to get our joy back. We need to get our hope back. We need to get our peace back. We need to get our life back. We need to get our relationships back. And for some of us, we need to get our children back. And for those that we're trying to draw in, we need to draw close to them. Talk more. Relate more. And when I'm saying that talking to people to help you get relief and get delivered from the stuff that you have done, the foolishness. I'm not saying you don't have to go to them telling them with every I dotted and every T crossed, but you give them just the basics, of which everybody can't handle your truth. Everybody can't handle your truth. So you give as much as you need to give. But lead by example, because when we get through to the side of freedom, we have a testimony for someone. You don't go through all of this stuff for nothing. There is a testimony in it for someone. It's going to bring life to someone. It's going to bring hope to someone that they can make it. It's going to bring hope to someone that their relationship that won't fall apart. So we need to make sure that by Pentecost time, that we are walking in freedom. Because we want to be there when that sudden hit of power comes. We want to be there so that we can be filled, we can be flowing in it, and that we'll be ready for it. Because there is a suddenly. And there is an instantaneously coming. That's not a word, but there's something coming instantaneous. And we want to be in position. We want to be in the position in the season. And not only when it comes, but we want to stay there. We don't want to just get it and then drop back. But we want to get it and we want to keep moving from glory to glory to faith. We want to continue to be filled over and over and over. And the more we walk in our freedom, the more he will fill us. The more he will give us. The more he will reveal. So we have to move out of our fear, out of our doubt, out of our insecurities, and move into our confidence, move into our authority, and move into who God created us to be. Because when we're there, we won't have to worry about all the other stuff. Free to be who God created me to be, not in my own, but in him.